Okay guys, here we are. I've been spending a lot of time the last 10 days kind of going into myself and feeling into what's all the motivation for these techniques, for the heart activation and for the cellular light body activation that's come through, and what is it about the theta healing and meditation and all this stuff that we do. And I kept on coming at it from a head level, which is, that's okay. And I realized, and I knew going into, I knew when I started doing this that I needed to access where's the feeling aspect of what drives me, whether I'm consciously aware of it or not most of the time. And because when we do this stuff from a mind level, it's great. It can be very strong and powerful, but the reason why, the deep kind of emotional feeling state, the emotional reason why is what's really where the power lies. And I knew I needed to get clear on that. And I was sitting having my little cappuccino here in Zagreb, and I kept on asking myself the question, and I forget how I changed the question. I asked the right question, finally. I forget what the question is now, but suddenly it started coming up. The times that I've been more emotionally moved, whether that means being excited or being really moved deeply to tears, has been when I express and communicate, or I realize, or I see that because of some deep shift in consciousness, that the possibility of change has been created. When I was working in a sales company, we were going to have a sales meeting, and all the other sales guys were like, oh, this one guy was really, really good at this particular sales job. He was making $250,000 a year. It was amazing. And all the other guys, oh, this guy here, he gets the best, I wish I could get his accounts, blah, blah, blah. They were bitching and moaning about this guy. And out of nowhere, without me planning to, I suddenly said, no, you guys, you don't understand. This is important. You need to really, really appreciate him because he's showing you that it's possible. And because he's doing it, it becomes possible for you. It becomes possible for you to create something similar for yourself because he's shown you it's possible, and you can believe it now. I mean, holy crap, where did that come from? And then a couple of other examples. The most recent, most powerful example for me where it really woke something up in me was a year ago when Norway had that attack, where that guy killed all those kids and those people, and it was just horrible, especially for such a beautiful, peaceful country. And then 3 days later, I think on the 26th, that was on the 22nd of July, 3 days later, when Norway reacted with this unified choosing love over anger and revenge and hate, like every other country seems to have done, it was just, the flowers and the love, the expression of love, and not giving in to fear. It just totally moved me. And it moved me partly because how magnificent it was, but it moved me also because I understood, and then communicated through a YouTube video, I understood that Norway had shown the rest of the world that some other way of being was possible. There was a possibility to change the way we respond to something like that we can, when the shit really hits the fan, when the worst things that can happen, we can still, as a nation, at the level of a nation, they showed us that we can still choose love and compassion over fear and anger and hatred. They'd spent, I don't know how many hundreds of years, gradually over time, choosing higher and higher levels of how they would want their country to be, what the values of their country were. And it was a long process, I'm sure. And I'm sure it wasn't perfect. But when this happened, and the choice they made it possible for a new way of being to exist on the level of a nation. That the level of a nation can choose love and compassion over fear and anger and revenge. And that made it possible for something new in the world to come in. It was so freaking important. And so when I realized that this morning, that it's this possibility of change, when someone does something, when people go deep, when they do what they need to do to change, to open to the possibility of change, to be willing to change their beliefs, to be willing to allow processes to go on inside of them, that creates this possibility of change. That's what makes me be moved. Another example is recently one of my friends in Palm Springs who's been through hell and made a decision to create something wonderful. She created the Art for Change movement on Facebook, Wendy Busick Cohen. And recently I found out that she'd been nominated for Woman of the Year for some organization, Civil Liberties or something. And when I read that, I just about started to cry, because she created the possibility of change and she's being acknowledged for it, and she deserves it. So all of the stuff we do, the real fundamental thing that, for me, that moves me to do it with myself, that seems to have made me open to receive these other kind of processes, these activations, like the magnetic heart activation and like the brand new cellular light body activation. It's because at the core of them, beyond how they work is cool and is really important, and they're amazing. The things they do for people is continually blowing me away. But the most important thing is not the how they work, not the fact that people have experiences of dimensions and seeing sacred geometry, and even the releasing of deep emotional patterns that have kept them trapped. Those are just the mechanisms for the more important thing, that they've chosen on some level to create the possibility of change and begin to experience change on a deep, deep individual level. So, as all of us allow ourselves to be led, to face ourselves, to be honest with ourselves that we are literally creating on a moment-to-moment level the reality that we're experiencing that appears to be on the outside, through things like regular meditation, where through the regular meditation, in a particular way, we become one with the all that is energy, with the field of all possibilities, through the theta healing and other techniques, of course, too, but the theta healing, finding the deeper unconscious reasons that make us think we're trapped, make us think we're a victim, and releasing those, and creating the possibility for change. And through the cellular light body activation, which has just come through literally in the last 2.5 weeks for me, through me, that literally on the level of the cell, through this process, it helps the cell realize and remember its true nature, which is that of quantum unlimited possibility, and that on the cellular level it can begin to let go of thinking it's stuck. And doing that literally on the cellular level changes the possibility for the human, the personality. It creates possibility for change in a way that's completely beyond the intellectual. Although once it starts happening, the intellectual experiences something. And that cellular light body activation is important also because it's a metaphor for how we will change the world. We're changing the individual cells of the body and freeing them from the emotional stuff. There's huge amounts of emotional release goes on. Some people have reported deep fears coming up and then being released, and sorrow and crying for days, that this old sorrow is being released literally from this level of the cell, which obviously will free them on the personality level to create something different, to have a different feeling in their life. And as the individual cells change and release, the whole changes and releases. And the same thing works for humanity. The individual, as the individual releases, in whatever, using whatever technique they use, meditation, theta healing, activations, whatever, other kinds of spiritual work, they become free within themselves first. They create the possibility of being and living in a different way, in a different energy, in a different level of consciousness, and therefore give permission for the little microcosm of society around them, the friends and family, they give permission for the rest of them to start do the same thing. Or they give permission for, and if enough of us do the self-work, take the responsibility, and do whatever it is that we need to do to let go of these ideas that cause us to think we're a victim, that we're not a part of Source, that our identity isn't actually Source. Because that's who and what we really are. We're a piece of Source, a piece of God, a piece of the field of pure consciousness. We're a piece of pure love, all of us. And as each of us, through whatever techniques, come to that place where more and more and more on the deepest levels acknowledge that that's what and who we are, through whatever technique, as enough of us do that, the rest of the world can't help but change with us. So we don't need to convince anybody of anything. We don't need to try and shove meditation down other people's throats, or try and force our family to learn theta healing or whatever. We need to go deep inside, and as Gandhi says, be the change we want to see in the world. Be the change we want to see for our families and for the world. And that's what's going to change everything. And that's what moves me.